I'm Sam Zagar, your projector guide and host, and this is a new narrative. We're hopping into season 5. We're going to be exploring the bridge between the mundane and the mystical. It is time to stop replaying those old scripts and write a new narrative. I'm glad you're here. Let's get into it. All right, welcome back. Episode 2, season 5 of New Narrative. We have Angela here, and she has taught me how to say her last name. Shit, damn it. Okay. I was not trying to start this podcast with a lot of swear words. Y'all, I no longer edit my life. I wish that I did. I just introed a second episode with a bunch of swear words. Welcome back. Angela, please correct me.
Saieva.
We just had a whole conversation about how many syllables are in her name because I mathed her name. I'm like, you only can have 2 syllables or two vowels before you have to put a syllable in them. And so I was trying to teach myself how to say her name. Guys, this is the third line way. It's a dumpster fire. I'm going to get this right. Angela Saieva.
Yes.
Did it. Nailed it. Third time's a charm. Carrying on, guys. Okay, so you guys have heard me talk about Angela indirectly or directly. Maybe you've heard, maybe you haven't. She's got the original herd that I got to work with. So when I was seeking out my own version of therapy, equine therapy was kind of the way that I wanted to go because I had this irrational fear of horses that I knew was irrational. So I wanted like the exposure therapy version, like get me in front of the horses. Let me see what happens. How are they going to react to me? How are they? And of course, it's an extremely emotional experience. So Angela brought me into that world. She had the horses. She explained everything about like what they were reflecting back to me or showing me. I have so much that I want to talk to her about. I mean, I've obviously talked to Angela a lot about this stuff, but it's mostly her place with her herd. You guys aren't getting to hear those conversations. I want you guys to hear some of the conversations. So I'm going to talk to Angela a little bit about like who she is so you can get more of an idea of her design, what her work is, what her herd is like, and then I'm going to get into some deeper questions. Let's do that. So tell me a little bit about what your setup is. What do you got going on for horses and work?
For horses in my work? Well, it's changed a lot over the years. Classic Manny Gen. It's like pivot, 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 pivot. So currently, the way that the work is being held is that I'm primarily supporting horse owners and equine professionals in a mentorship and education role, meaning like a lot of times people are struggling with, for example, on the owner side of things, they're feeling really isolated. They're wanting to do things differently. They're wanting to have a more consent-based, permission-based, co-creative relationship with their horses. And they're in an environment that is really conventional. And so they're struggling because everyone's telling them they're crazy, they're wrong, they're stupid, they're letting their horses walk all over them, they're being disrespectful, blah, 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 all the things. And they feel like, how am I supposed to honor what it is that I feel called into, what my horse is calling me into, when literally everyone around me is saying, I can't do this, or that I'm wrong, or is just fighting me every step of the way. So for the owners, it's a lot of support to say like, you're not crazy. I see you. This is real. And to support them to be able to advocate for themselves and for their horses, to learn the tools so that they can do that on their own without constantly feeling like every single thing that's said to them knocks them off their center. And now they're questioning, they're doubting when they're already questioning and doubting because it's so new to begin with. And, you know, supporting the horses obviously as well through that, in that can take a lot of different forms. Sometimes I'm supporting them through like virtual bodywork sessions, or we're looking at nutrition, right? Doing feed plans or environmental things. Like, I mean, it kind of goes on and on. So that's more the owner side of things. On the equine professional side, it's a lot of equine professionals get burnt out in a really similar way to therapists because they're constantly seeing horrific things being done to horses. And they, of course, have these huge hearts and they're full of love and compassion and they want to help everybody. And it's like at some point they start to get to this phase of, I don't know if my heart can hold any more of this. And I think I need to walk away because there's not enough change. There's not enough positive impact for them to feel like the sort of weight they're holding is worth it, I guess, in a sense. And so where I work with them a lot is to help them understand that the weight's not actually theirs to hold, and to learn ways to, for example, like, they're of course often very intuitive, very sensitive energetically. So they walk into the space and they feel everything. And it's like, okay, that's information, but it's not yours to hold. So when I start to teach them things like energetic hygiene, how do you set yourself up to be in your own space, your own body as a channel to receive information, but not to take it on as if it's yours, to clear all those things before they leave so that they're not taking, let's say they see 6 clients in a day. By the time they get to client 6, they've got all 5 other clients with them, right? So it's a lot of those types of things. And it's also empowering them to really educate their owners on why they operate the way they do so they can hold their work in integrity, because so many of them are like, I'm doing this for the horse, but the human wants X results. And so I'm always explaining to them, if you're having a struggle with your client, your human client, not understanding your process or not wanting to get on board, it's because you need to educate them better on why. When you really bring people into the why, because most often it's like, this is a whole horse approach. I can't just show up and do one session of this thing and then everything's resolved, no matter what the profession is, right? When they start to understand this really big picture that the practitioner is viewing their horse through, all these different lenses and pieces, all of a sudden the clients are like, oh, I get it now. And then it gets to a point where either that client is aligned for them to work with, and they kind of like, they hook in, right? They're like, oh, okay, I get it, bring me on board, or it's not for them. But I hate seeing them just bail,
Yeah.
because I was in that position too. And I was the person who would like show up to the barn and feel sick to my stomach. I'd feel everything that was going on. And I was like, I don't know how I can continue this, but I want to make an impact. So I have a soft spot for the professionals, because I really believe that like the revolution we're working toward is a boots on the ground revolution. It's not going to happen from the top down. So I love supporting them, because it is this big ripple effect that is really satisfying for me when I see them out thriving, and then their clients are thriving. And that impact always is so much bigger than just, that practitioner and their client. And that's what I think is really exciting about starting to really see the change in the industry.
Okay, there are so many things that you said that I had interesting, like little thoughts there, but the one that is sticking out the most is it feels like um no matter who the client is or what they're working on, it seems to me that they come to you with a level of heaviness. So maybe that's guilt, shame, lack of understanding. Something's not going, like the relationship's not what they wanted it to be, and it needs to change. And there has to be a way of like coming out of the grief and getting back to the joy in some way, or coming out of the heaviness and getting to the lightness. But when I think about the lightness, like I have this visual of like riding the horse running through the field bareback. Like there's the bond and the freedom and I think actually very rarely are horses, especially horses and their owners, experiencing that kind of joy and freedom and bond and relationship. And in fact, it's a lot of sickness and weather and vet bills and other people in the industry. And there's a very cool thing that, I mean, you'll be very aware of with me, is that you know how inexperienced I am in the horse world. The horse world, let's say that. The energy world, I'm great in. The therapy world, I can manage that. Human design, nailed it. But the horse world is very new for me. I just had like the childhood draw of I love them. I want to touch them. I want to be near them. Like, I love the pictures I have of me as like a 4-year-old just like laying on the back of a black horse that's just walking around and eating in the grass or whatever. And it's like giant teddy bear. Like, I love you. And I'm a farm kid, so I'm well versed in like the work, the weather, the dirt, the heavy lifting, that part's no problem for me. And I'll be honest, that part is a really nice balance to the energy work that goes with it, because you cannot do energy work all day every day. It's heavy, it's kind of dirty, it's exhausting. I like mucking out a stall. I love that. Oh, it's a nice time to think. It's a
Yeah,
nice
there's
time to
something
just
so
chill.
therapeutic about just like picking a paddock or mucking a stall.
Honestly, I'm like, I can't imagine how this would feel if I was a generator with a response to,
Mm.
I'm a splenic being with a response to a clean environment. So when I clean a stall, there is like, I get all the nasties out and I leave so much of the good straw and everything behind. Like, I'm really efficient with just getting the stuff out that shouldn't be there, you know? But I'm not like, oh, that was so satisfying to clean the stall per se. Like, I would love if I got that kind of little energetic boost off of it too. But for me, it's kind of like a way to like drain out some of the energy work. Is the more monotonous physical labor helps me ground. Literally, there's so much grounding that happens out at the farm. Man, there's so many things that I want to bring up. Okay, so we've gone in two directions with your clients. We've got the people who own the horses, and then we've got the professionals. We've got the professionals that tend to be more in the energy work, so you're helping them do kind of more like what you do. And then there's trying to help people change the relationship they have to their horse. Now, because I'm not versed in the horse industry, I have a beautiful innocence about how dark some of it is. I've been exposed to it, obviously, more over the last few months as I've gotten deeper into this. But the idea that like consensual horsemanship is a new topic or something people are afraid to say that they're interested or learning or trying with their horses, that's so wild to me because that's actually like that's how I thought it was supposed to be done. That's what I thought the standard was. I remember some of my first questions were like, why do you guys call it breaking the horse? Like, why do we keep calling it breaking them?
Hmm.
um I prefer softening. When I encounter people that do gentling and softening, I'm like, I understand that. I like that languaging more. Like getting your horse soft in their body, helping them flex parts of their body and things like that. I like that. Having like um getting to the point of being like responsive and stuff. But I also am looking at things from the lens of like, if a horse is not responsive, maybe the standard way the industry looks at that versus the way that you and I might look at that is a little bit different. Because if I see a horse, so I'm preparing to do therapy sessions. I want to talk a little bit about whether or not all horses are mirrors. Let's say we have the basic example of someone, a client presents, and all of the horses do not engage. There's no interest, there's nothing going on. For the client to assume that they're just putting out like disinterest or you should walk away from me or I'm not something you should come to, like I don't want people to assume that because we don't necessarily know what kind of horses we're working with. Like we don't know their types, we don't know their experience, we don't know their age, we don't know their energy level. Like I'm looking at them through an individual lens, but I'm recognizing that even looking at the horse through an individual lens is uncommon within the horse industry. The same way that like with human therapy, we tend to look at like, are you a person? Are you a man or a woman? And like, this is how we might approach it's homogenized. There's so much homogenizing in it. I love human design because it made therapy for the person so specific. Human design for horses is a little bit more abstract because it's a lot harder to get the actual birth time. And there's not a lot of human design horse body craft professionals and interpretations of it. And I'll be honest, it's just not even that interesting. I don't really care what moon gate my reflector dog has, or, like what I'm interested in is just the general type. Is this a responsive type? Is this a reflective type? Is this a protective type? Is this a manifestor type? So I can get a little bit of like the energy from them. But like I've met horses that are just completely fucking shut down. And how I want to approach them versus how they're being approached is I have some discrepancies. Like you get a lot, I see a lot, Facebook is a great place to learn things. I see a lot of rescues where, and like I'll see this on Instagram or whatever, people will rescue an animal and then they try and sell the animal at an affordable price, like adopt it out to somebody else. So let's say it's like, okay, I got these 3 feral horses off of the meat truck, $400 a piece. Come get one. It's like, okay, well, why is that horse on that meat truck? When they say it's an aggressive horse, I'm like, is this a traumatized horse? Or when they say like it can't be halter broke, I'm like, has everybody chased it constantly? Like, so I'm so curious about, I'm so curious about so many fucking things, to be honest. What did you get out of what I said? That was more tangential than anything.
Well, there were a lot of things. You know, when you were talking about the responsiveness of a horse, and even these things like, well, that horse is labeled as aggressive or can't be halt or broke or all these things. The traditional horse, industry says, well, how do I just fix that problem so that they comply? It's a very force-based system. Whereas the individuated version of that, the human design version, if you will, would be, what's going on for that horse? Like, why aren't they responsive? Not just they're not responsive, so let's try something else to make them responsive. It's why aren't they responsive? What's going on for that horse? If they're shut down, why are they shut down? If they can't be haltered, it's like, has anybody ever listened to that horse in their entire life? Probably not. That was Dido. Used to take me 45 minutes to get a halter on her. Nobody asked her anything. She was forced to be trained as a hunter jumper, which she did very poorly at, so they abandoned ship and they bred her. So then she was forced to be a broodmare twice. Then after that, they thought, well, maybe we'll try it again. Still couldn't start her. Oh, she's too difficult to train. Well, she's a project now. Okay, well, she's 9. She's a 9-year-old green project horse who's had 2 babies and has like no real human education, so to speak. Why? Well, because she had physical stuff going on in her body, for one. So ask her to do a job and she physically couldn't. And where some horses would just like shut down and comply, she's like, no, I can't. And she'd buck and kick and rear. So, right, the traditional lens is more harsher bit, tie her down, whatever the things are to make her comply. I know she had all kinds of trauma related to a lunge whip because for the first like 8 years of having her, if she so much as saw one, she would break into a massive sweat and just run. But then, she was the first one that I said, hey, lead this one, because a 4-year-old could lead her and she would just be like, show me where I'm going and I'll go. She's actually so gentle and willing to comply. It's just that nobody asked her, hey, is this okay for you? And then when it wasn't okay for her, instead of looking into why, it was just like, well, now you're punished and you're forced to do it. So when you're talking about working with horses in a therapy setting, it's incredibly important to know your horse partner because, you brought this example. Okay, well, let's say the client comes out and all the horses leave or they won't come near them. Why? Well, that's a great question. And that's a very nuanced answer because maybe it is that the human is showing up with something that the horses are like, hey, human facilitator, as in me or you didn't properly prepare this person for the session. So we're not ready to engage because you actually didn't do the prep job well. And so for my horses, that's like having a conversation about safety, about honoring boundaries, about horse language, cues. What does it mean when these things are happening? It's always a grounding practice. How much can we get you in your body? Some people can get a little bit, some people can get all the way. Through all of these preparations, I'm starting to understand the client. And through that, I'm like, okay, I'm starting to understand maybe how the horses might respond to them. Because I've been with my horses for a minimum of 10 years and a maximum of 16, right? With the herd I have now. So we know each other pretty darn well. So if my horses don't want to come near somebody, there's certain things that I'm going to track or like check into, but I wouldn't have known that if I didn't know my horses so well. And it would have been a different response if, like, for example, Dido was still in her learned helplessness. So if she was still shut down, then could I trust that that has anything to do with the human client? Probably not. That's probably just her and her experience. And so this is another piece of like the therapy work. And it's so interesting because when I first started doing the horse medicine, Phantom didn't want anything to do with it. And he said right out, he was like, I don't know what this is and I don't want anything to do with it. I'm like, that's fine, because the way I hold it is it's all free. So nobody's being forced to do anything.
Yeah.
And he would literally, I think it was like 4 or 5 sessions, he would just stand and observe.
Mhm.
It was so fascinating. And after those initial sessions, I saw him be like, I'm interested now. I see what this is. I've had a little bit of experience from my observation, and now I want to play the game. And the funny thing is now you almost can't get him to not be involved.
He's very
Because
playful.
well, he's playful, but he also like he knows his role, he knows his medicine, he knows his value that he can bring to a person, and he knows when it's his time to do it. So that work, I think, and this was one of my concerns with the year of the fire
Year of the
horse,
horse.
that work is so layered and nuanced, and I just don't think that enough people have a real grasp of it. I mean, I've been doing it since 2020, and there are still times when something happens and I'm like, whoa, I am not sure what to do with that. And so I will sometimes just say to the client, like, that was really interesting, and I'm not 100% sure what just happened. And then I bring it to them, like, how do you feel? What's going on? Right. And it's always kind of bringing it back to them. But
It's way more about facilitating the conversation.
it really is about facilitating. And you have to have that trust in yourself as a facilitator, that you are able to observe all parts, because it's not that easy. It's not just like a one-on-one with somebody. You're working with a human client, you're observing a full herd of horses, you're observing the environment, because that's what the horses are also picking up on. So like there's multiple layers of things that are going on, and you're also trying to say this open channel for intuitive hits to come through, so you can, right, just like in your body jumping, you're like, I don't know, it's just this comes through, and you share it, you don't know where it's going to land. But if I'm in my head or I'm in self-doubt about it, then I'm probably going to miss that. And maybe I now miss like the thing that person came for. So it's like, it's no small thing to do that work.
Okay, one of the things that I have a more clear way to express this now that you brought up the year of the fire horse. I'm gonna great time to go into it. There's so much content, and hilariously, like I went into the pop HD thing. I almost want to call this like pop horse content. It's the pop
Yeah,
horse content,
totally.
and it's like pop horse astro coach content, because you notice how it's not horse people posting year of the horse content, it's coaches and astrologers.
Well, it's coaches and astrologers, but it's also horse professionals, which is what's making me concerned.
Okay, so I have this idea that like people are trying to sell equine therapies as if when you go to the herd of horses, each one of these horses is a complete, healed, educated, aware, qualified horse version of a therapist. And it's like when you come to them, they will fix you, they will be the medicine, they will. And I'm like, I cannot wait for the older woman stuck in her type A control freak, whatever, to get matched with the mare in the herd that's the same type, like the medicine is not what y'all think it is. it's it's not comfortable, right? Like it's fucking Buckley's, man. It doesn't taste good. It's it's a wake up call. And the weirdest part is it's non-verbal. They don't tell you what you're doing wrong. They tell you what you're doing wrong, but they don't tell you what they're doing wrong. Like it's not always just you're going to stand there and it's not like getting a massage. That's what I want people to understand. It's not like going for a massage. It's not like going to the spa. It's borderline terrifying, which it should be. Like for me, my interest in this is not so much in the like total relaxation bliss out kind of thing. It's more in the like exposure therapy. It's more in the challenges. It's like if you're afraid of horses, we're getting in there. You're not going to be afraid of horses by the end of this, because you being afraid of horses is stopping you from doing certain things in your life, and there's no reason to be afraid. You have to learn how to be around them, not run from them. Be around yourself, not run from yourself. I like the more edgy, pushy, ego proving. Like this is the human design stuff I'm bringing in, but the ego is here to prove. And I like supporting people to prove that they can get through certain things. I struggle a lot when it feels like my work is more therapy in the terms of people are like, my life sucks, when it's basically not self showing up and it's a bitter projector or a frustrated generator. It's hard when they just want to talk about all the things going wrong in their life. I'm like, so what are we going to do about this? And I have such a pull to come away from online work and into local in-person work. And I've had this feeling that post 2027 is this return to regionalism. And I feel it, like, slight segue. But did you, oh, this is a personal question. I could choose to edit this out after. Did you notice any financial decline in the more online based part of your work over the last year? When, if you were selling something that was predominantly information based, did you notice a decline in those sales over the last year?
Yes. Um, the mentorship side of my business totally took over everything else over the last, say, 6 months.
So this is really interesting because most of my clients and myself in this boat, we felt downturns financially when it came to things that we sold that were information based. My main reputation in human design is source based, source based, source based information. I have a reputation that is information based, not transformation based. And I saw a huge downturn in the sales of all things related to information. And I woke up this morning with such a clear thought, and I laughed at the irony of the contribution I had made to my own demise. And I'm a YouTuber, I'm an Instagrammer. I put an insane amount of source based information out. I have educated the shit out of AI, and people use AI for human design readings now.
Which is
Now,
awful, by the way. How many clients have
awful.
had come to me and say, no, AI said this? And I'm like, did AI even run your chart properly? Because I have it in front of me and AI told you were a projector and you're actually a generator.
AI will still be like, yes, Sam, you're a splenic projector, and that frustration's really hitting today. And I'm like,
Right.
yeah, totally. And
Yeah.
so whenever my AI gives me back human design information, like if I know it's wrong, sometimes I will correct it when it's trying to give me information relative to my life. Like if it's trying to give me advice based on my own chart, I'm like, well, that's inaccurate. When it gives me generalized incorrect information, I don't correct it, y'all. Like I'm against Pop HD. I tried so hard to put real information out there. I educated the AI for all of y'all so that you could learn from the AI now instead of coming to learn from me, which is great, you know? Like, y'all save your money. I'll be honest, I stopped seeing certain professionals and AI completely replaced them because that's where I'm at financially right now. That's where I want to invest my things. I've had some pretty phenomenal conversations with Gemini that, I'll be honest, really helped me not make some poor decisions or not invest my energy in wrong places. But the end of the cross of planning, and we're in a 111 phase right now. That's so information heavy. When we switch to 2027, hey, religious people, listen up. We're going into a 666 phase. That's not lost on me. When I say we're going into a 666 and you're like, what the hell is she talking about? Sixth color, sixth line, sixth tone. When the cycle changes, we're in a first color, first line, first tone, everything one, and we retrograde. So if we go from 11111, we're going to go to 6666666. And it's a totally different vibe. It's not about information. It's about living, expressing DNA, differentiation, quantum, and differentiation, I guess, is really a huge part of this conversation because we are talking a lot about bringing that differentiation over to horses. Do you have anything you want to say about my big tangent before I keep going?
If there's one thing I do, it is all about helping people to not need me anymore. It's empowerment of self. So I think there's no, surprise that mentorship is so the thing right now, because people, I think, are sensing that the information they used to, source from external places is maybe not trustworthy as it was once before. Maybe the people who are putting it out have dark pasts that are starting to come to the surface. Ooh,
Mm-hmm.
shocking. Maybe actually it's making them more confused to constantly be outsourcing their own authority, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this is what I've been saying for years and years. It's like, you are the modality.
Mm-hmm.
It's you. So I'm not saying don't take things in from external. I mean, I read books, I watch videos, I take in information, I study, like that's great, but I'm always running it through my own filter.
Yeah.
So when certain things have come to light recently and people are shocked, I'm like, I'm not shocked. I tracked that. I didn't know the extent of it, but I knew enough that my internal system said, don't follow what that person's got going on. That's not for you.
Do you use much of this language with your horse clients? Like, how much human design language do you use? How much do you say things like your authority or your filter? Or, like, how do you direct people to their correct decision making place?
I mean, I've been saying inner authority for years, like before I knew about human design. So that's kind of the terminology I already was using.
Yeah.
Um, but I like inner authority because it's about sovereignty. And sovereignty is the word that really tracks for me.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where the horses were saying, like, in my journey with horses, I was super conventional and I did all the horrible, harmful stuff. Like that's where I started. And then I had this pivot shift when I started practicing body work where everything changed and opened up for me. And my whole world like blew open and I was completely untethered. Like, I'm like, I don't know what's going on anymore. And all I focused on was, okay, I want my horses to be listened to, properly cared for. Like everything was about the horse. So I focused solely on what I wouldn't have called then, but was working toward was their sovereignty. It was like, I don't want them to be slaves anymore. I want sovereign horses. And so we did that for a while. And then my kisses mare was like, cool. So how about you? Are you sovereign? And I was like, right. You want to talk about the work being uncomfortable. It's very confronting to be partnered with horses.
Yeah.
And so she's the one who was like, you've now put way too much focus on our sovereignty, and the scales are completely out of balance the same way they were before. So now we're the masters and you're the slave. So what are you going to do about that? First of all, I was like, I guess I didn't know I wasn't sovereign. and then and then when I started looking into it, I realized like, okay, so now here's me using the word sovereign, but like human design would say looking at your conditioning. And then
Mm.
I'm looking at my conditioning and going like, whoa, all these people I surrounded myself with who I completely handed all my authority over to because I so desperately wanted to be the best horse person I can be. Just teach me, just take my money. Like the things I could have, the cars, the houses, the like vacations, whatever. I spent it all on horse education. And my horses were like, cool. So now that you've done all that and it's gotten us kind of nowhere, except for things we need to undo, now what are you going to do? Now, how do you do this? And I'm like, I don't know because who can teach it to me? And they were like, that's the whole point, girl. No one can teach it to you. It's you and it's us. So you have to trust yourself. And it's like, oh, I didn't realize I didn't trust myself. Yeah, you need to connect with your intuition. Oh, right. I didn't realize my intuition was completely offline. Like, that's what the horses initiated me into was my own sovereignty. So then I became obsessed with this, like, well, okay, so what does it look like when we're both sovereign? And how do we walk that path? And that was like years of undoing the conditioning and all the harm I'd caused and moving through my grief and my all those things, which is why I'm able to help people do that now. Right. But the reason why I think too, like it's interesting timing that 2026 is the year of the horse, because
Mm.
if you actually work with horses in that way through the lens of sovereignty, then they are going to bring you to something that is incredibly individuated because that's their whole jam. They're like, yeah, who are you?
Yeah.
And who am I? And then what does that look like together when we do this as sovereign beings in a partnership? Because that's a very, very different thing than what 99% of people are doing with horses.
This is so neat because I remember like being with you in your herd, and I was like, I do human design. I was exploring my gift of body jumping, but you looked at me and you were like, can you body jump a horse? And you said you didn't. One of the horses asked you, and then you asked me.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, so in me showing up to allow like that, the sovereign sessions to happen with you, sometimes my brain is trying to integrate and talk at the same time. It's not working very well.
It
One
was a
less
trick question
problems.
though, actually, because I knew
Oh,
you could. It was more me like,
you gonna try?
yeah, inviting you to try.
And it worked, and it really did shift a lot of my direction because it added on. It was like, oh, you don't just do this with people, you can also do this here. But my experiences of doing it with people, well, I learned to do it in person because I work online. Most of my sessions are online, so they're over Zoom, and it's so different over the internet versus in person. Um, and I different is the right word because better or worse is not the right word. It's different. Like when I do energy work over Zoom, there's a cleanness to it and a directness to it because they're not in my environment. I'm controlling my environment. And it's kind of just like a straight shot right in. Whereas in person, there's so much more data to take in, which does give a more complete answer because it considers the environment that you're working in, not the person in isolation.
Which is really important when you do the horse body jumping because that's their reality.
Yeah, they're in their environment.
So earlier when you were saying like about, oh, it's not all just fun and games, it's like vet bills and sick horses and this and that, and the first thing that comes to mind is like, yeah, why are all the horses sick? And the environment plays a huge role in that.
I'm like, I have learned that like I do love the Instagram content that's like horses do try to kill themselves every day, I swear to God. And it's like they just like they run into stuff or they step funny or they like
It's like, but why? Because horses are like incredibly aware, proprioceptively, highly, highly aware. They can feel a mosquito hit their skin.
like
Like,
we all can feel a mosquito hit us.
but they have hair coats.
That's true.
What I'm saying is like when people keep saying, oh, these horses are accident prone or they're this or that, it's like, why? It's never nothing. It's
Yeah, like if your
always
horse jumped a
something.
fence, they're not accident prone, they're trapped and they're trying to escape.
There's always a reason. Always. And it's not like they're lazy or, they're just, I mean, in some cases, if it's like a 2-year-old, okay, fair, they might have had a growth spurt and they're trying to figure out their new legs. So
Mm-hmm.
that's a thing. Yes. But I have seen enough to know that nothing is without its reason.
I'm trying to think. I'm like, the info on this would be skewed because in order for the human to observe, the human is now in some level of like interaction or interference. So I feel like we're looking at like what would our control group is like a herd of horses in the wild and no one interferes with them. But what happens when we get to the point where the horse is not wild? The horse is like beyond domesticated genetically. What happens when they've been bred and bred and bred and bred and bred and bred and like how much of the wildness do we breed out of them? How much of the naturalness do we breed out of them? I guess I'll pause there. How much of the naturalness are we breeding out of them?
Well, I think different breeds are at different levels.
Okay.
I mean, there's this whole thing about thoroughbreds, and I hate to blanket statement things, but I will say that there are a lot of thoroughbreds that I know who are from the actual racing breeding lines.
Yeah.
So they're bred really specifically for speed,
Mm-hmm.
right? Not temperament. Nobody cares about that. I mean, they should. They're riding them at 2,
For sure.
but it's speed, right? It's speed and it's can they last? So when you're only breeding for those things, then I know all these off the track thoroughbreds who, if you put them in the wild, they would not survive. They're
Yeah.
so used to being micromanaged all day long. Whereas if you put Dido out in the wild, not only would she survive, she would thrive. She'd have her own damn herd. She'd probably have stallions like all knocking at her door, and she'd be like, prove to me you're worthy of who I am and what I've got. Like that mare is so capable because, and I don't know what her breeding is. She's half thoroughbred, and whoever Samantha is, ironically, her mom's name is Samantha. Um, but like Phantom, for example, I think he could totally survive in the wild. I think Indy, maybe not as much. He does have a little bit more of that, like, um, he goes a little bit to that higher threshold because he's a horse who's not as embodied. He's a horse who does more of this like astral plane kind of living. And so, but is that his breeding? Not, I think that's more who he is,
Mm-hmm.
like his spirit. But there's definitely a level to the breeding where some of those horses, yeah, they still have instincts, but they haven't been chased by a lion in a while.
Okay, so I tried to map out this like being nice to the horse kind of thing. And so it's like, okay, so I've got our wild horses, right? So perhaps in theory, one of the kindest things we do is we never touch horses, we never ride them, we never bring them home, we never domesticate them. We leave them completely wild and natural. You could counter argue that that's not the kindest thing because you leave them susceptible to more predators, or like you could help take care of, you could steward them in a better way. Okay, so we can become stewards of them in some way. Now, as soon as you take on responsibility for them, like at what point are you responsible? So, like if I see any sick horse ever, do I call a vet in for it? Is that my good stewardship? Is good stewardship recognizing an injury where the horse's quality of life is diminished and euthanizing? I don't know. Is good stewardship constantly trying to break new horses to gentle them to put them into homes? Or should we have giant like pasture feed lots where we turn them all loose to be as pseudo natural as possible? But are they on grass, or like are we giving them hay? Like, so once we interfere at all, every interference takes them out of their naturalness to some extent. So I imagine there are people that have perfectionist problems that are like, I'm going to be the best natural horse owner. So what the frick does that look like?
Well, and the big thing here is you have to look at each individual horse. And coming back to the breeding, it's like, so you could say this is the kindest thing to do is just leave them all alone and put them on a massive field. Well, all the horses who have been bred in a certain way are going to have metabolic issues and they're going to get laminitis.
Yeah.
And then they're going to suffer for their entire lives.
I'm like, hoof care. Who's doing all of the hooves? What is natural hoof care in the wild?
Well, and they don't need it if they have space to move. They're designed to naturally wear their own feet.
And chip their own feet off and grow their own winter coats. And
Yes, which is another thing. You're going to start to blanket a horse. Well, as soon as you put that blanket on, you are now taking on the responsibility of monitoring that horse every hour of every day for the entire season
because
because
it's
you
either
start
too
to
hot, too cold,
interrupt.
or sweaty and fungusy. And
Yeah. You know, I made that mistake once where I over blanketed my horses. They got lice.
yep, no thanks.
That was fun. So I know the micromanage world because that was me. I was constantly on top of them. And it's again, it's the horses. If you ask Dido, what's your best life? She's like, check on me once a week. That's my best life. If you ask Phantom, he would be like distraught. What do you mean you're only going to check on me once a week? I want you to come out here 5 times a day. I want to spend time together. You're not taking me out of the paddock enough. I want to do things. I want social time. Like to that horse, it would be cruel to just leave him be. So it's so specific, and that's the thing where we're at, you know, it's way too we're way too far into it to say any blanket statement at all about horses.
Differentiation. And like on the sides, I'm doing this. I'm doing real time learning because I now have a horse, and we both know I'm not well enough educated to make all of the right decisions for her. So I have to learn along the way, which is a bit of a dangerous process because let's be honest, it's new parenting. It's my first baby in the horse world, and I'm a new horse mommy. And I'm like, did I feed it right? Did I check? Is she warm? Did I give her enough straw? Shit, you know. I have some I have some awarenesses of her. Some of it is through like recorded history. I trust that less than the impressions that I get from her. She does not show me really anything about what her life was like before, but there's like a taste to the information. There's a taste to the story. And I notice things like her hooves seem longer than some of the other horses. Like, oh, so then I asked the owner, like, why are her hooves longer? Well, she was being foot broke. She was getting ready for the farrier. And then all of this stuff happened. And these things have all been pushed back and delayed. And I'd notice her feet, and then I clean her stall another day. And this is where it started to change. I entered her stall and she popped out from her turnout and she did this little prance, like she showed me a manicure. And I was like, you just showed me your feet, really, like as if you had them done. And it was so like, you notice when things are different, right? She did something different. And I was like, you're ready to get your feet done. You want your feet done. You're asking for attention. You're asking for care. You're asking for, and I felt called to just like stand with her and hang out with her. And she was so calm in her approach of me. She was so graceful in her approach of me. She was very tender. She was not forward, pushy, or confident in any way. She was curious. And she's not fearful either, right? But there's like, hey, you're new, but you've been around for a while. You've been cleaning my stall for a while. I'm not bothered when you come in here. I kind of like when you come in here. You want to come in here more? Like, I felt like she was like, hey, you're starting to notice me. You're starting to pay attention to me. Do you want to chat with me? Do you want to hang out with me? So that's a sad feeling. And then when I inquire with the owner about her, like, what is her deal? It's like, oh, well, she's about to be 4-ish. She's in for sales. She's for sale, but she needs to be broken and sold or trained and sold or whatever. And then it starts to like, uh-oh. I'm like, crap, that was too easy. She's here and she's available and she's talking to me. That's a little too easy. That's not scrolling Facebook looking for a horse I might want to buy. Like, this isn't shopping. This isn't seeking. This is. And I was in her turnout with her and I was like, is this the direction this is heading? And everything from her is like, it's not heading there. It's there. Your mind, make it happen. And I was like, how do I make this happen? When I started giving her things like treats and she didn't take them, I was like, why aren't you taking this? Like, are you afraid of me? And then when she finally put her face up to it and like put her lips on it and then like just rolled it around and then was like backed off a bit, I was like, you have no idea what this is. You have no idea what treats are. Fucking 4 years old. You have no idea what treats are. What was your life like? And it's not to assume that she had a cruel life. It's to assume that she had a no contact life. She didn't get specific attention for things. And then I realized from her perspective, it was no different than if you're a kid in an orphanage and someone comes every day to help take care of things at the house and then they leave and they go back to their own house. And I was like, oh shit, I'm adopted, mommy. Well, that's kind of cool because I always wanted a daughter. And a really weird thing happened when 5 years ago I miscarried who I know is a daughter because it was the only one I had a direct conversation with. And when I told that pregnancy, you need to leave because your potential father doesn't want this and I can't do this on my own. 20 minutes, well, let's not get to the punchline. I told her she needed to leave. And what she said was, don't worry, I can come back. And then 20 minutes later, I had a miscarriage. Now I got a 4-year-old who has the same kind of voice that I heard. And I have this like, I don't know, I have like weird sadness for her. Not because I know she had a bad life or anything, but because like it was so quiet. Like Like it's like hearing someone call for help and not being heard. And that's really sad. It's also hard sometimes to trust what you think you're hearing from your own animal because of the personal fears and assumptions and bias attached to it. I find it's actually way easier to hear other people and their stuff than me and my stuff. How did you actually trust what you heard? Because when you talked about like your relationship with Dido, she's 9, she's experienced but green, but she wasn't being listened to. Now I also know you haven't talked about it yet, but I know that you rode Indy and you were a jumper. Okay,
Yeah.
so I want to know like how, like what you heard from your horses that made you transition how you work with them and how to actually trust what you were hearing from them to make those changes.
Well, as you mentioned, it's much easier to hear horses who are not yours. And so that's actually, it started with Kisses having a really interesting experience that I couldn't explain and didn't understand, which kind of just opened the door to like, there's more going on here than meets the eye. And then it was the client horses that I was practicing my body work when I was still in training and doing my practice sessions. That's when I started to be able to feel and sense, and my intuitive gifts were starting to come online. So it was through them. And the reason I was able to start to trust was because I could ask the owners and get validation.
Mm, yeah.
So, for example, I would come out to a session, have like a wicked headache maybe 5 minutes before I get there, and start to realize that wasn't my headache. And I would ask the owner when I get there, like, hey, did anything happen to so and so? Oh, she just banged her head. It's like, oh, okay, that tracks. And so things like that would happen. But when it came to my horses, and this was the thing that Kisses was trying to say to me, she's like, you think you're sovereign, you think you trust, you think these things, but you're not. You still doubt it when it comes to us. And ultimately, I just decided to trust. That's really what it came down to. And I kind of said to myself, well, I have to just trust until I have a reason not to. And that's that's how it happened for me. And then sometimes I would hire an animal communicator to like validate or not. And at a certain point, I realized I didn't need the animal communicator anymore because there wasn't new information coming in. It was like, oh, I've I've got it now. But I didn't have the validation from the external source like I did with my clients, right? So that was my way of getting some sort of feedback. Um, and yeah, after enough times of that happening and it just being confirmation of what I already knew, because this was kind of like, so do you get it now? Like, this is what we were trying to say.
So, what are some of the ways that, like, how do you receive your messages or how do you confirm them? Because you're like, I chose to trust it. But let's say, for an example, one thing you and I talked about is like which feed they wanted. You're like, they had a yes for this feed. So like, how do they have a yes for something?
Hmm. So, one of the really cool things I learned in my bodywork training was how to muscle test. And so muscle testing is one of my primary sources of communicating when it's things like feed plans or um, what time do you want to be fed today? Or where do you want the hay box this time around? Or like things like that that are more matter of fact, let's say. But most of it just is a knowing, which is weird because it's like, it's not vision, it's not words. Sometimes I hear things. I wish I could just hear things. So I'm always like, please, why isn't that the gift? That's what I want. Like, but it's more just like, I know that that's what they're saying or they need. And if I get that knowing and I miss it, usually something external, like strange, will happen. Like, for example, Dido was asking for this supplement called Omniety, and she hasn't had that for, I don't know, like 3 years. And it kept coming in my head, and I just had this knowing like, oh, she wants that. She needs that. And I was ignoring it for whatever reason. I don't even know why I didn't test it when I was doing her feed plans. I think I just like forgot or something. And then it was like 3 days in a row, somebody mentioned that supplement to me. And I'm like, like, oh, right. She wants that. And so that's kind of how it just works for me is if I don't follow the knowing, something external will happen. And then I'll like get pinged into like, oh, right, I was supposed to do that. Or, oh, she is asking for this. Okay, sorry. And then, I give it to her and she's literally devouring the bucket, like can't get enough of it and give me more, give me more. It's like, right, there's my validation of that's what she was asking for. And I wasn't listening or I missed it.
Okay, I like talking about kind of like the trial and error side of this because as I'm learning to like hear Esmeralda's voice, I wanted to think like, I hope she can help me figure out what to feed her. I don't know what to feed her. Like she's obviously been fed and she's eating fine or whatever, but like if she wants modifications to her diet, how am I going to select those? There's a lot of things I could give her. And then while I was trying so hard to find the answer, I realized that for 4 days in a row, I had the thought, I need to go buy oats. And I was like, why do I need to go buy oats? I don't need to eat oats. I need to go buy oats. Why do I need to go buy oats? And so early on the way to work, I stopped at Superstore and bought a huge bag of rolled oats and a couple of other things. And then I get to the ranch and Steph's like, yeah, those aren't the kind of oats that we feed them. And I was like, what? They're not the quick ones. And she's like, yeah, no, there's very little to this oat. It's just kind of fiber dust at this point. Like it's not the horse kind of grain or horse kind of seed or whatever it is. I was like, oh, okay. And I tried to give her this little mix and I put it in I gave it to her and she took one bite and she's like, I was like, okay, there's my validation that was a no. So I was like, I know she said oats, but I got the wrong oats. Did I mess them up? Whatever. And then Steph goes, well, most of the horses here, they get given the supplements, Wilson's Performance Blend something. And we give this to them. She goes, but there's two varieties of the mix. There's the Performance Blend and the Cool Blend. The difference is that the Cool Blend has oats in it. And she goes, try that. And so I tried that, loved it, crushed it, couldn't get enough of it. I was like, oh, okay. So I was close, but not quite right. And I still did need some help from the horsey people, but we did figure it out. So that was super cool.
Well, and there's definitely like research components to this. It's not like something drops in, I just always know what it is. And I also have like a lot of horse experience behind me. So there's education that comes with it. It's not always just like some intuitive hit. But I think what happens is the broader the education, the more information we have, the horses are kind of referred to as like going through like a filing cabinet. Like, oh, you added a file, right? There's more new information and now we can access that. So it's like the more things I've learned, the more things they're able to ask me for or ping on. Like I'll see a taping, like a kinesiology taping in my mind's eye. And I'm like, oh, somebody wants tape. Then it's like, hey, who is it asking for that? Who needs that specific support? But interestingly, the way you're describing it is like I call that hijacking. And like sometimes they'll hijack me. She's the most prone to hijack me, which makes sense for a lot of reasons. We're
April
kind of basically
lavender. That was
yeah,
hijacking. I know exactly what you're talking about.
yeah. And she'll hijack me, and then I'll be doing something, and I know it's not actually like me, but I won't really know until after the fact. Like I'll do it and then I'm like, "Oh, she just hijacked me." Like, "Okay, you need that thing." But she only usually does that if I've not been spending enough time with them or I'm not paying attention or I'm like really busy and I miss it. Then she's kind of like, "I need the thing and I want it now." And then she'll hijack me. And then in some ways I'm like, it's easier. It's more direct. You can just do that. That's fine.
Okay, so one of the things you just showed me is like learning how we read a situation has to do with some of our own assumptions and projections on things. An example here is that Esmeralda has like a mineral box in the corner of her stall and it's always full of poop. And I remember saying in the very beginning of cleaning out all of the stalls, I had a thought. I was like, this is not a good horse. She poos in her mineral bin. A good horse is not supposed to poo where they lick. Ugh. The horses that go to the back of their turnout and then they poo out there. I'm like, smart horse, clean horse. So I was like, Esmeralda, dirty girl, Why are you pooing in your mineral bin? But what's interesting is, to me, I was like, that's a really gross habit. And yet it doesn't match her because she doesn't have gross habits. She's a girly girl. And so why would she shit constantly in her mineral bin? Well, I bought her minerals. She crushed them. It's like she was saying, like, hey, this thing, why don't you empty it and fill it? Hey, this thing, why don't you empty it and fill it? Hey, this thing, I'm gonna put shit in here until you put what belongs in here. I'm gonna keep bringing your attention to the fact there's the wrong thing in this bin.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
Communication takes many forms. It's more like, are we paying attention?
what happens when they decide something, but then circumstances change it? So let's say they decide on a hay, but then that hay doesn't, it becomes unavailable. How do you make sense of that?
Life. That
So the horse is
happens.
not a future teller, it's asking for something, but life can still interfere.
Well, they are in a sense a future teller. Yes. Like for example, speaking of the hay, when we had all these changes coming and Dido said, "Can you get me smaller large bales? I still want large bales, but smaller ones." And then we couldn't get the hay that we were getting anymore, and I didn't know that was going to happen. And the only hay we could find were smaller large bales. And I'm like,
Oh.
"Oh, thanks for the heads up that that was happening."
So when she's like, when the
Now,
problem comes, this is how I want you to solve it.
right. Now we had a heck of a time getting the right hay because then, okay, so we chose the hay, but then some of it had way more alfalfa in it than others, and it was really challenging to get the right bales because you look at the outside and you think, okay, this one looks a little less alfalfa-y, but then they start eating it, and now there's this like massive section in the. I mean, you can only do what you can do. So even within that, there were challenges where it was like, I mean, that's the hay you asked for, we got it, and then even within that, there's like circumstances. So there's always life, just like how, you get an intuitive hit or your higher self says something, and then we always have free will. So, you're getting guidance to buy this horse, and your human can still say, no, I'm not going to do
Mhm.
that. And it alters the trajectory. So there's always that. There's always the free will element, and there's always the unknown.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing too. It's just as with anything in any relationship where it's a constant check-in. And right, it's like the best thing we could ever do for our horses is the same thing we can do for each other, which is like stay current. It's like, who are you today and who am I today? And
Mhm.
not pull from the past. And doesn't mean like we forget the past because it's built on that. But so many times when I've gotten into trouble, it's because something happened in the present, but I ran it through a past filter, and it
Mm.
muddy things up.
Yeah.
And it's challenging to stay current. And also that's like one of those big curriculums the horses are asking us to really step into, is like, do your best to stay current, especially when you're with me, because I'm staying current with you. Like I'm
Yeah.
tracking you all the time.
Their only
So
present moment.
yeah.
I'm tracking you all the time. I was going to ask you that earlier. I was like, can you feel when they're staring at you? Man, I get to.
Oh yeah.
I'm just like doing a stall like 200 feet away. And I just feel it. And I turn around and she's just staring at me from her turnout. And I'm like, are you observing me? Do you want something? Because almost every time I catch her looking, I'm like, I'm going to go pet her.
Well, and that's the thing too that happens. Like, when you live on the property with your horse too, like my horses used to be able to see me through the window. So I'd be in the window and I'd feel something, I'd look up and someone would be like locked on to me. I'm like, oh, what do you need? And then you go outside and inevitably there's something. Oh, I need you to refill the water buffet,
Yeah,
or we're
there's a
ready
weird
for our
stick in here.
buckets.
Take it out.
Right. Or whatever. Like, yeah. So yeah, that's what's really beautiful about it, is when they know that you're listening, they'll ask you for things. And that's really beautiful because, you know, most horses don't have anyone listening to them, and they don't have anyone to ask. And so when you not only are saying I'm listening, but like I want to hear you and I'm happy to give you what you need, like what, just let me know. That's such an incredible like place to be in, because they meet us there too. And then when we do go out there and we need them for other things, sometimes we don't even know we need them. That's when they're showing up. That's when the medicine feels like a massage, because we go out there without an expectation, and they meet us in that love and in that sovereignty, and they say, my choice is to like care for you right now, which is going to make me emotional.
Mm. You kind of gave me a little bit of you made me understand in a weird way like the generosity of God there. And God for me is interchangeable with like source, divinity, provider, creator, designer, whatever you want to call it. But I believe that, and even Ra believes that, we're an aspect of a totality. Your crystal fragment is a piece of a bigger thing that shattered. Like we are pieces of something greater. And I think sometimes when life is hard, it's hard to look at like a beneficial source as wanting to give you things, wanting to care for you, wanting to provide for you. But you are God to your horses. And when they look at you and they send you that mental prayer, they're like, hey, mom, I need this thing. Will you take care of this for me? And your answer is like, of course I will. I love you. That's nice.
That's like a whole other conversation too.
Let's pause there for round two.
Sounds good.
Thanks for coming on, man.
My pleasure.